Welcome to the Revenue Builders Podcast, a weekly show featuring B2B sales leaders and executives. Hosted by five-time CRO John McMahon and Force Management co-founder John Kaplan, the show goes behind the scenes with the people who have been there, done that, and seen the results. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe, rate, and review the show to help us reach more people. Revenue Builders is brought to you by Force Management. We help companies improve sales performance, executing the growth strategy at the point of sale. Find us at forcemanagement.com. Enjoy today's episode.
Welcome to the Revenue Builders Podcast. I'm John McMahon, and my special guest today is Chris Riley. Chris started his career at EMC, where he eventually became regional vice president. After EMC, Chris moved to Comdisco and then to CenterPath before joining McData as the VP and general manager of the Americas. After 3 years at McData, Chris moved to Gryphon and then to HP's storage division as the vice president of the Americas. After 6 years at HP, Chris moved to Dell EMC for 6 years as the president of the Americas. Then Chris became the chief revenue officer at Automation Anywhere. And today, Chris is the president of worldwide operations at DataRobot. Welcome, Chris. Hey, how are you, bud?
I'm doing great, John. How are you?
Good. You're looking good today. Looking fantastic.
As are you. Great to be here.
So maybe you start just by telling us a little bit about what DataRobot does and where it's applicable.
Yeah, well, I think the world's been taken by storm by generative AI. So good news is everyone's somewhat familiar with the AI space, but DataRobot's been around for 10 years. It's a leader in the AI machine learning space, for predictive analytics. We've got a good portion of the Fortune 500 large enterprise accounts that are using our technology to find those corner cases where they can run their business more efficiently, more effectively, lower churn, increase, output. And it's a world-class platform. It's a SaaS platform. And again, we're leaders in the space. We've now incorporated generative AI into our platform, which will give our customers another extension of AI capabilities from the platform and the investment that they've already made.
And when you think about maybe is there a top 2 or 3 use cases that, almost every large company needs DataRobot for?
Yeah, I'd say customer loyalty, customer churn, predictive analytics on what's happening in that area, which, as you know, is critical, right? Who might churn because of a service event or bad customer experience? And the second would be, higher yield on inventory management. So we went through this chip shortage over the last several years, right? Many of our customers are in that field and looked at, ways in which to, improve the overall yield of inventory tied to margin, tied to revenue.
So DataRobot's not only giving them really good insights, but it sounds like it's actually prompting them saying, based upon some leading indicators, we think that this is going to happen inside this use case like churn.
Exactly. Financial services is our largest, vertical segment, but we're in manufacturing, from transportation to healthcare, and all see benefits across, each aspect of their business, some horizontal use cases and some vertical.
Yeah. Good. Well, Chris, you've had to step into many leadership roles along the way after reading your resume. And when you step in and you think back, I step in on day one, as a sales leader or as, president of worldwide operations, what are some of the top 3 to 5 things that you're looking to learn about, your organization or the sales organization?
Well, that's a great question, John. As you look back on your career and you realize, what could I use some advice on and where did I fail? Because I think out of failure comes, a level of improved EQ and humbleness, because we're not used to failing, right? As you know. But I see my best learning experiences when I went from EMC to Comdisco. And what I learned is all the things that worked at EMC might not work in Comdisco. and they had their own culture and their own success. And what I should have done is taken the first 30 days to really understand their processes and their methodologies and their culture and what good looks like in their world, both in sales management and first line sales management. And then sprinkled in a little bit of, all the great things I learned while at EMC to build upon their culture, but maybe give it a boost to help improve productivity.
Yeah. Well, that happens a lot with first time leaders that move from one company to another. They think, well, it worked over at, company A, so it should work at company B. And then they try to cookie cutter, everything that they did at A into company B. And like you said, some things work and some things don't work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is it where they're, now that you've done it a number of times, are there a number of areas where you're a lot more cautious? Like you talked about looking at the processes and profiles of the people and the culture and how they get things done. Are there now areas where you say, I'm going to go into this area and I'm going to take my time to learn? What are some of those areas where you really are cautious about?
No, it's a great question. I typically break it down into 3 areas. First is kind of how the business runs operational command of the business. Right? What's that executive dashboard that's, measuring and metricing, key elements of the business. And as we all know, if we're in this business, pipe generation and pipeline it trumps everything else. So how are you building pipeline? How are you doing in the digital and social? How are you doing with sales generated pipeline? How are the BDRs doing? And just see how they've set up their business, right? Their CRM system. Maybe they've, augmented that with Clary or Dawn, and some other tools. And what methodology, right? Are they using Medic or MedPick, right? Which many companies use. Are they using gap selling and, trying to figure out more from user profile, but get an appreciation of what they're doing, and not doing. Then the second part of the ops piece is productivity, right? Trying to just understand how they're measuring productivity of their sales team, how they've metric the pipeline for the sales team, and finding those leading indicators that someone's struggling, well before, they hand in their resignation or, choose to go down a different path. So I don't think you hire anybody that doesn't want to be successful. Your job as a leader to help them understand when they're potentially going off track, improve enablement, give them some one-on-one time, give them some coaching.
So let me unpack some of that stuff. Let's go down the road of, you talked about business operations and the importance of tracking different metrics. So there's metrics that you track during the quarter, and then there's some that you now look at once the quarter's finished and say, how did we do? Can you give us an idea of some of those metrics that you track during the quarter and then some of the ones you review after the quarter?
Yeah. And also, how do you manage 3 quarters out, right? To see the pipeline you're building and, so in quarter and out quarter pipeline.
Yeah, that's really big for people. That what Chris is really alluding to is if you have a really long sales cycle, you're not really just looking at next quarter, unless you have a sales cycle that's a month or something. But when you have sales cycles that are 6 to 9 months, you have to be looking pretty far out.
100%. When I look at metricing the business up front, from an ops perspective, it also comes with an operational cadence, right? You don't want to be so internally focused. Allow your teams to go out there and, create pipeline, close the deals that are in there for the quarter. But what you do expect is a level of accountability at every level. First line sales manager, second line sales manager, third line sales manager. And you can't really drive that unless you're accountable down to, the day, the week, the month, right? So someone says something's going to close, the week of the 12th, and it doesn't close the week of the 12th. Why would you have any level of confidence that the next date they put on there is actually achievable, right? Either they don't understand the process, their champion's not strong enough, budget's not there, but those are typically some leading indicators that folks have some happy years and are expecting things to happen, timelines that aren't realistic. Pipe gen within the quarter, absolutely critical. Activity within the quarter. How many sales calls? How many of those are converting to, sales stage 1 or 2? You're building the pipe for future success, both in quarter and out quarter. And then for sales management, there's an additional set of reporting that you're looking at, which kind of goes in quarter, out quarter, and, making sure that they understand they need to build a sustainable business long term and metric the business the right way.
So when you close the quarter and you see that productivity either went up or went down, how do you put your finger on, how do you start to break it down to figure out, okay, what did we do right or what did we do wrong and need to correct, for the next quarter if productivity had dropped?
Yeah. I think, what I try and do is I look at, did they have to be perfect in closing their pipeline, right? Were they overestimating the things that come up and the curveballs that they get during the course of the quarter? And are the productivity expectations you have of your sales team, your first line managers and your area leaders consistent with the kind of pipeline coverage they need? So I usually try and look at productivity at the first line level as maybe the last thing. The first thing is, do I have the pipe at every level to actually make the sales team, successful in each quarter? And you find in quarter, 50, 60% of the team make their goal in quarter and the other ones don't. And over the course of the year, 65 to 70%.
Yeah. Yeah. And now let's go to, hiring issues. Like when you see that a rep failed, how do you start to break down why they failed? Was it because you hired the wrong person? Was it because you gave them to the wrong leader, or because you couldn't train them, you couldn't develop them, or some other reason? How do you typically break that down to figure out, did we really lose a good person here, or did we just make a bad hire?
Yeah. So, I look for managers to really be given coaching and, providing feedback to their teams on a daily basis. This isn't a once a quarter or once a half performance review. They need to be, first line managers need to be spending time, right? They have to hire, right? Retain, train, inspire, teach. So if I usually find a first, salesperson isn't successful, one of those things went wrong, right? They didn't hire someone with the right work ethic. So let's take maybe a step back. What do I look for? Work ethic.
Okay, let's do that.
Right? Someone who just wants to outwork everyone because they've got something to prove. It's how they were raised. It's their background. I know for me, I'm not always the smartest guy in the room. Most of the time I'm not. So I just got to work harder than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's that coachability and, ability to absorb and to learn. So what you try and look for is, what was it in this, rep that I hired that, that I didn't see during the hiring process, that perhaps their ability to grasp new concepts. And, you start to build out a profile of what you're looking for, for the reps. In some companies where you have a BDR to ISR to field kind of progression, you've got some of those metrics, right? They've been successful at the first 2 steps. You're led to believe they can be successful at the third. It's the external hires that are hard. Even those, you look for a previous track record, right?
Yeah.
If they weren't successful in their previous jobs, what was it that, made you believe they were going to be successful here? And sales managers, sometimes they're so desperate to hire, like they potentially bring someone in who they think is on the stacks and they think they can coach them up. And what you lose is a year in productivity.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people think that they can change the person, right? I think the person has certain character traits and you're probably not going to change them. Like I used to say to people, if their mother and father couldn't change by the time they're 18, you're not going to change them. So
yeah. I use this thing.
Well, you might be, if they're smart enough, you might be able to give them knowledge. If they're hungry enough, as you said, they're persistent, you might be able to, help them develop skills, but you're not going to change their character. That's not going to happen. You're not going to make them more intelligent. You're not going to, kick them out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning if they're not driven. So you're not changing that.
Right. As they say, you're not born a mule and die a racehorse, right? I mean, you are who you are.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And like you said, for some of us, we may not be the smartest people in the room, but we certainly have to work hard. And that's what I call like a PhD, persistence, heart, and desire. You just have to give it everything you got. And if you have that type of persistence, you can persist through, look, if you're smart enough, you can actually pick up some knowledge and interest skills, things that you have to, that are repetitive and it takes repetition to learn them. That's all about being persistent.
Yeah. And it's also hiring the right profile for the right role, right? And if you're looking for someone to drive an activity-based space, you don't hire a hunter, right? Or a farmer rather, right? And if you have someone that's been exceptional at the activity-based space, right? A deal every week, several deals a week, you might not see their success in an enterprise cell where it's, 5 to 7 to 9 months. So, you also got to take a look at, is this person's skills transferable? Or did you put them in a situation that they probably weren't going to be successful?
Yeah. And it can change. Like, if you have to take somebody that's been into a really big company for a long period of time and you stick them in a really scrappy startup and now they have to scrounge for resources and they never had to do that type of stuff before. A lot of times, to your point, you're putting them in a spot where they're probably not going to be successful. I've also seen it where you do hire somebody that's right in the current year. And let's say your company is, $50 million, but 2 years later, you're $200 million. You went 50 to 100, 100 to 200. It's a whole different company now. The customers have changed. The messaging has changed. Who you sell to has changed. Competition has changed. The types of skills you have to have has changed. And a lot of people just don't adapt. So they were a good hire 2 years ago. And then you look at them now and you think, person's a dinosaur. They haven't changed at all. They're just not coachable and not adaptable too.
Yeah. And I think that's why, as a CRO or as a leader, two of the most important hires you can make is your, business ops. So go-to-market strategy and ops and enabling, right? You can get those two right. You metric the business properly and you build the right training to, coach people up and put them at least in a position to be successful.
Yeah. I usually think I'm with you. I think it's pretty simple. One, if you hire really good people and then when you onboard them the right way, so you can, decrease the ramp time and then you train them and develop them to increase their productivity and you give them to good leaders, you're probably not going to churn them either. They're probably not going to leave. So
absolutely. Yeah.
And all of that sounds so simple, but as you know, there's a lot of work that goes into doing that the right way.
And you got to stick to the process, right? You can't cheat and you can't make it go faster at times than you want it to go, right? So if you stick with it over time, you'll see the success.
Yeah, I think what you're referring to there, for people that have sat in like Chris Riley's seat or any other C-level suite, you think that you can turn things around, let's say in 9 months, and you figure out then, oh my gosh, this is never going to happen in 9 months. It's going to take like 5 quarters before this is really going to turn around. Things actually, when you're dealing with people, don't happen as quickly as you'd really like them to happen. As much as you try, you can't, like you said, you can't short circuit the process. Yeah. So,
go ahead. If the sales force is turning over that quickly, right? You've got a high level of attrition. People aren't hitting their productivity numbers. To the managers out there, don't jump into those opportunities without doing a lot of due diligence. That expression, the product matters. It really matters, right? These people were successful one place and not successful at the company they're at. There might be some reasons behind it. So really poke into the product and the company you may be going to. Just ask some questions. How many people are hitting goal, right? How many folks, achieved 100% for the year? Can I actually make my income? you could have great people and a great leader. If the product isn't the right product market fit, there's more challenges to being successful.
100%. 100%. Hey, Chris, so when you think about you going up through the leadership ranks, everything from, rep all the way up to, your position today as the president, what did you need to learn? What's the biggest thing when you look back? Like, what did you need to learn about Chris Riley?
Kind of a self-assessment, right? Looking at your, EQ and trying to figure out, if you weren't in the room, someone asked the question, who is Chris Riley? Would they say the things that you'd want them to say, right? Leads from the front, hard work ethic, smart, right? A fair leader, but an accountable leader, et cetera, et cetera. And I think at times we have a view of ourselves that might not be reality. So first thing you got to do is know who you are and how people perceive you. At least for me. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah. How did you figure that out?
I did some Spencer Stewart, third party, like, hey, go give me a 360 on myself. And sometimes you don't like the feedback, right? Yeah. They're little things you can change. But you don't realize perhaps, how you're being perceived by the team.
Yeah. And there's a lot of checking as a leader. There's a lot of checking in with yourself. There's a lot of looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
And a lot of self-correction.
Yeah. And the other part, John, is, what I learned early on, and this is a learned skill, you need a coach, you need a mentor, and you need a godfather. And
say that one more time. You need a coach,
a mentor, and a godfather.
And right? Tell us what you mean by the three of them.
Well, a mentor is somebody you can, speak openly without, fear of, someone in the leadership role, casting judgment, or, you can kind of say, hey, listen, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, and I feel like I'm failing. What's some advice you can give me? So pick that mentor very carefully, because you want someone that'll give you honest feedback and help you grow as a professional. A coach is someone who internally, can show you what best practice looks like, right? Show you what's helping make them successful. Or if it's a manager, right? What are the attributes and strengths of, the most successful people within the organization? And listen and be curious and try and get the details so you can improve. And a godfather is, if you're doing all those things right, when you're not in the room, who's advocating for you for that promotion? Right? Who is saying, listen, if we're looking for someone in the right role, right? Who's had a proven track record of success, right? I know John McMahon is going to be the guy to recommend me for that role. And I think some people just think, hey, if I just perform well, everyone's going to know. So build out your network and find, at least for me, find those three roles and choose them carefully and nurture them.
And is a mentor typically inside the company or outside the company? Coaches, it sounds like your coach is inside the company, the mentor is outside the company.
It can be either, right? Okay. If it's inside the company, it has to be someone you really trust.
Yeah.
But it can be either.
And the godfather's obviously in the company.
In the company.
Much higher up. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, what did you need? That's what you had to learn about you. What did you have to learn about other people?
The hardest thing for me to assess at times or early in the career was, work ethic and aptitude. And then the third one, which you learn very quickly, is coachability. Right? So do they have the work ethic? Do they take feedback well? And do they have the technical acumen to learn something new and then articulate the value prop succinctly and clearly to customers and prospects? And
I think that part's really hard, because I've been in positions where people have said to me, like, you have to get rid of XYZ rep. And I've thought, no, I'm not getting rid of them. Whereas some people listening to this would think, no, McMahon gets rid of people, whenever he wants. But it's actually not true, because I think about it all the time. So I'll give you an example. There was a guy on one company that I worked in where they said, you got to get rid of this person. Never sold anything for 6 months. Didn't sell anything for 9 months. Didn't sell anything for a year. Now the chairman of the board and the CEO is telling me you got to get rid of this person. I'm like, I'm not getting rid of him. Why are you not getting rid of him? Because every time I kind of invested myself in the person, every time I would make sales calls with them or see them in a QBR and get up and do presentations, I could see the incremental jump in their skill set and the knowledge that they had learned. And I could see them gaining confidence. And then by the end of the 5th quarter, the person sold 2 deals over $1 million, one for 1.1 and 1.1 and one for 1.3. So I knew I made the right decision. Now, if you're not seeing that true incremental jump in their knowledge and their skill set, and they're just flatlining, then yeah, maybe it's time to get rid of them, and ask them to go do another job. But if you're seeing that and you're still feeling pressure to get rid of somebody, I think you got to question whether or not because people learn at different speeds. You got to question whether or not you're going to get rid of somebody that's about to land a couple $1 million deals. Right. And then go find somebody else that's going to take 6 to 9 months to ramp, and they're just the same person, but in a different body with a different name.
Yeah, I don't know how you've done it, John, but like performance management is a really hard thing to do because you have those core cases and unique situations. How did you discern between someone that just was afraid to make difficult decisions as a first line manager versus someone that might have acted too quickly?
I think that's getting to know your leader and getting to know the person that they're managing and seeing if they're really investing in that sales rep. A lot of times, what I find, especially with first line managers, is you ask them like, what is Joe or Sally? What are they doing? Why are they not making it? And they give you these general answers like, they don't have enough grit, or, they're just not motivated enough. And I say, well, what does that mean? Like, give me an example. Like, tell me what you mean by grit and tell me why they don't have grit. The person's been coming here for a year and they haven't sold anything and they're living on their base. It would be a lot easier to go someplace else. What do you mean they don't have grit? And they're learning I can see them learning the product. What do you mean by that? And I find that that's where second and third line managers need to jump in and help those first line managers who have a really hard time dissecting exactly what's going wrong with the person that they're trying to lead. So, and I hate those general answers. I like it to be very specific that I can see, oh yeah, okay, they're having real trouble with that. Now, question is, can we help them get over that? If you've been trying to do that and you can't, then it might be time for, a different type of decision.
Yeah. And how do you set the expectation where those first and second line managers, when you're maybe running the Americas or the CRO, where it look like you might be micromanaging, right? But if you set expectations that, I want to get involved in, helping folks that aren't, providing those leading indicators for success. But micromanaging is something none of us want to do. How did you manage through that?
I don't think it's micromanagement. I think if somebody's going to get rid of a rep and they're telling you, well, you want to get rid of Joe or Sally, the question is why? How come? So I used to say, okay, you're going to have to take responsibility somehow, some way, because you hired the person. You were in charge of training and developing them, and you were in charge of leading them. So you have to tell me where you failed. You fail at hiring, you fail at training and developing, you fail at leading. Because you got to take responsibility for it. It can't just be that this person's no good, because then we're not learning anything about how we're hiring people, training and developing people, and leading people. We did something wrong. We have to take ownership, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you make them look through that filter, that changes things. The second thing is, if you're in a growth company, is growing, 70% to 100% a year, and they all know that there's going to be X amount of new second line managers and Y amount of new, VPs or third line managers next year. I used to say, look, the only way I'm going to promote you is if you can prove that you've been able to hire somebody and develop somebody to take your spot. If you can't do that, why would I ever take you to the next level? So now they put another filter on that says, whoa, whoever I hire here I better be able to train them, develop them so they could take my spot. Otherwise, I'm not going anywhere.
Exactly.
Right? And that doesn't cost me anything. That's not micromanaging. I'm changing their filter.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
100%. Yeah. If you can't, train up your backfill, it's going to be difficult to move you out of that role.
Yeah, right. Because why would I promote the person that can't develop, can't hire, and can't develop and can't lead? Now I'm taking on bigger problems eventually for myself as the CRO.
Exactly.
What about prioritizing? Like you've jumped into all these different roles and you have to prioritize and manage your time. What did you have to learn there? What would you tell people is a real lesson that Chris Riley had to learn in about prioritizing and time management? Because everybody, you're the president of worldwide operations. Everybody wants a piece of Chris Riley. Everybody. How do you manage it?
Well, what trumps everything is creating pipeline, right? And if you kind of look at it through that filter, to choose one of the words you took before, all the discussions you're having with marketing, is around what is our marketing doing to help drive demand? If you're looking at it through operations, how are we metricing the business? How are we aligning territories to help put ourselves in a position to optimize our pipeline? And then you're very candid and open with the team to understand what are the things that are impacting their ability to kind of do their job, right? Is it the tools? Is it the training? Is it, we aren't organized in our operational cadence. So we don't have enough time in front of customers and either building pipeline or closing pipeline. So if I look at it through the filter of, how do I drive pipe? You come up with a lot of the reasons why maybe you're not driving, right? And that's typically cross-functional.
Yeah. And that's your job, is removing those obstacles, running interference, right? Get rid of that to make people more productive.
Right.
Yeah. Now for you, because I'm going to turn this around on you and not make it about micromanagement, but as you got into the VP levels, the C levels, the president level, how do you stay in touch with what's going on with the reps? Like I used to call it the street, like what's going on in the street. Like I'm in this big building here. There's stuff going on in the street. I got to know what's going on in the street to really be able to affect the productivity of the sales rep. So how do you stay in touch with what's going on with the reps?
No, great question. I think, as I mentioned before, I think one of the most important hires is that go-to-market strategy, biz ops role. So if you metric the business properly and you've got the right expectations set with the team, it can free you up to actually get in the field. And I'm a big believer in leading from the front, leading with customers, meeting with partners, spending time with the sales team or the sales management team, both during and after work hours, and just learning from them what's impacting their ability to be successful, learning from customers. Is our value prop resonating? Are they seeing what they expect to do out of our product? Or our teams as engaged as you'd like them to be? So you get such valuable information, when you're out in the field leading from the front.
Yeah, I agree. That's
tiring.
Windshield, right?
Yeah.
And you get to know the reps. You get to know what's really driving them. You get them to loosen up a little when they're in the car with you. And then eventually they let go and they're telling you all the things that's going on. And you're not hearing it just from the one rep. They're almost like a microphone or a megaphone for everyone else in the field.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, John, but I think, for me, that's also where you build trust with the field. Right. So as a leader, the field has to say, hey, my leader cares about me. They care about making me successful. They're truly interested in what's keeping me from being my best self. And if you then go back and fix just a few things, the loyalty and the trust just goes through the roof. And if you got a team that trusts you, they'll work harder. They'll break down walls. they don't want to let you down because they know you're fighting for them.
Yeah, I think it also shows up in training. Like if you're not in touch with them and you're training them on like 5 different things, they're all sitting in the audience saying, well, why are they training us on this when there's 3 or 4 other issues that are more important? But when you're hitting right on the issues that they face every day, that's when they know, okay, I got a leader that really understands what we're going through.
Yeah. And John, I'll turn it around and ask you. You've been CRO 5 times. Most every one of them has been incredibly successful. You probably walked into some pretty shitty situations and turned lemons into lemonade. But you walked into a few where you were the accelerant, right, to help grow faster. When you walked into those shitty situations, what was it you did and how quickly to fix it?
Well, when you walk in, I think no matter how big the organization is, I think it's divided into 3 groups in my experience. There's a group that no matter what you say, they like the old leader, they like the way things used to be done, and they don't want to have any part of you.
Yeah.
And then there's another smaller group that is dying for new leadership, dying to win. Those are the type of people that usually come just to play as hard as they can. And then there's a group in the middle. That's the group you have to win over the most, because the group that wants to win is already out making sales calls. They're going to do whatever you ask them to do.
Mm-hmm.
But the group in the middle is being talked to by the group that doesn't want any part of you. So they're trying to almost put like seeds of doubt about this new leader to the biggest group in the middle. So what you have to do is you have to find a way to tell them, like, here's how we're going to, onboard people. Here's who we're going to hire. Here's how we're going to onboard. Here's the types of things that we're going to train on. And that's all based upon not, again, cookie cutter, but having done enough homework to understand what they need to be trained on and getting some wins as quickly as you can. And then letting the people promote the wins. And then that group in the middle starts to come over and rewarding those wins, sometimes with a little bit of extra, maybe stock options or extra commissions or some sort of rewards for that. And then the people on the far end start to disappear on their own, or they just don't make it and you got to let them go anyway. And then the big group in the middle moves over. And now you start to also understand the types of people that you have to hire, which you were talking about earlier, as far as, this is the persona we call on. Here's the use cases. Here's the size of the companies. Here's the messaging. Here's the ROIs that we have to do. These are the types of people that I need with these skills, this knowledge, and then the characteristics that you discussed.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, but really, at the end of the day, you got to get those wins, and you got to get those wins fast, and you have to be involved in helping those people get those wins. But then you don't talk about it. You let them talk about it.
And celebrate it. Yep.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Big. And then by rewarding them extra commissions or extra stock and putting them in front of the whole group and saying, look at what this person did, you are already bringing that group in the middle over.
No, absolutely. Nope, firmly agree.
Yeah. When you think about some of the leaders that you've seen in your career, what are some of the top characteristics of like the best leaders that you've seen?
Yeah.
You have to pick like 2 or 3 even.
Yeah. So they're able to build trust very, very quickly. Right. So I think the sales organization looks at them and says, I'll be more successful with that person in charge than I would have were they not in charge. So they really trust the leader that can help bring them to the promised land, so to speak.
Yeah.
Good operational cadence, right? They're running at the business, but with a plan that, metrics the business properly. They're looking at in quarter and out quarter. They've got command of the business. And then the third one we just kind of talked about. They get a lot of windshield time, right? They're out with the reps. They're out in front of customers. They spend a lot of time training and developing talent. And there's a few things I look at, right? There's the know me, trust me, like me, buy from me. So if someone knows you and likes you and trusts you, they got to buy from you.
Right.
And it's true with management. If someone knows you, likes you, and trusts you, They got to want to work for you because they believe you can make them more successful. So I think that's the biggest thing you have to do as a leader is put the right management team in place. And oftentimes the rest kind of falls in order.
Yeah. And is it the same with the flip side of the leaders you've seen that have failed? What were they missing? Is it exactly the opposite?
It's not exactly the opposite, but a lot of those qualities just weren't there. Maybe they didn't manage the business out quarter, right? So they looked like a star one day and the next quarter they weren't performing. And then the next quarter they were great. And it's that level of consistency. But ultimately back to your point, if they fail, that's on me, right? I either got to move them out or I got to help them, in the areas where they're not maybe strong. And finding someone strong in all those areas, sometimes it's hard, right? Take 2 out of the 3, or 3 out of the 4. That's kind of what you end up doing.
Yeah, I think for the people that I've seen that have failed at all different levels, it's about recruiting. Like they just hire the wrong team. Then once you hire the wrong team, by the time you figure out that you have a problem, the problem's already got you. And it might be too late to now turn it around. And then I also find that they're just not good listeners. They're not really listening to what their people are telling them. They're not really, in the moment with their people, whether it's the windshield time you talked about, or it's on sales calls, or it's listening to feedback that they get from their people. They're just not good listeners. And then they have a lack of, like a team mentality. It's more about them. They're almost more narcissistic than they are about the team first, and the individual second, Yeah.
And over time, you kind of see that coaching tree, like what system did they grow up in? Where did they achieve success? Like probably some of your proudest moments, I know mine are, to see someone that used to work for me who was coachable, who did listen, who did adopt the system and the process and believed in it, go on and achieve great success. Well, nothing better than that.
100%. Yeah. Let's talk about the sales process quickly. Everybody loves to talk about that. When you think about the sales process, what do you think is the most critical stage or step in a stage of the sales process?
Making sure, why us, why now, why anything? Do we really have a compelling value prop that, has a strong ROI? And if they didn't move forward, there'd be some pretty significant pain.
Yeah. Now, do you drive, do your people at DataRobot, do you want them to go get an ROI? Do a cost justification? Yeah.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it's every company's a little bit different. And sometimes building that ROI is easy. And sometimes it's a little harder. But you can turn it around to the customer, where it's like when I just look at it this way. If a proposal's going up to the CFO for signature and I didn't help provide the input, then I question whether or not the value prop is being, properly stated. So I'd rather give the customer the ROI and let them white label it or just extract the table and put it into his or her presentation. And at least I know my reason that I worked on my champion with to do this deal and do it with me and do it now is making its way to the CFO.
Yeah, because these days, all CFOs, especially if it's a pretty big deal, are asking, do we have to have this to one of your points? Why do we have to have it now? And then if it's $1 million or 300,000, why do we have to do 300,000? Why can't we do 150? Or if it's $1 million, why can't we do $500,000? If you really need it and you really need it now, then they ask, well, why do I have to do so much? So to your point, if you're not involved in the ROI and it's not your reasoning along with your strong champion, chances are it's going to get shot down.
Yeah. And you can have a great champion, but that champion may just like you and want to help you and bring something forward. But the CFO is going to be the blocker.
Yeah. Well, that's their job, right?
It is.
And that's why you need a strong champion. Has to convince them, yes, I have to have it. Here's the pain. I have to have it now. Here's why every day we wait is going to cost us more money. And here's why I need this much, right?
Well, what do you believe the most important step is?
I think you got to get a champion. If you don't get a champion and a true champion, a lot of people think that they have a champion, they have a coach. I'd say that's the biggest mistake in sales.
Yeah.
But, and to get a champion, you have to do really great discovery up front, right? You have to come in by having done homework on that customer and understand their use case and understand who you're talking to and how they're measured, and make sure that you've done a lot of diligence on that company so that when you're coming in, you've already differentiated yourself. You know what their problem is, and you know how your product aligns specifically to their pain points and can solve each and every one of those pain points. And if you do that right and you come into that first meeting not wondering what that is, but coming in with a viewpoint, then I think you're going to really have a great demo that you can actually quantify for each differentiator that you have that solves their pain points. How much does that actually cost you guys today? How much is that? And wait until you get an answer before you move to the next one. Because then it's not a demo of like, let me show you everything about DataRobot can do, but it's a specific demo because you've done your homework walking in the door. So you've eliminated a lot of steps in the process. And in that process, you're going to find a champion. And when you're asking those questions, because you come in with a viewpoint, if there's 5 or 6 people in the room, only 1 or 2 of them are probably going to be able to give you the answer. So you already smoked out that the other 3 or 4 don't really matter that much in this process. And there's 1 or 2 over here that I'm going to have to spend my time with because they could be my potential champions.
Yeah.
You know?
The other thing I found is like success begets success. If you have a strong champion, there's no better sell than a customer selling another customer. Right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
you turn your champion into a reference who you're using all the time to help convince another customer, that they should move forward or share with them their ROI. And there's lots you can learn from your champion, but customers selling customers is pretty special.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. You walked into this new company, DataRobot, or you walked into the last one, and it's the beginning of the quarter, and you need to forecast the number for the quarter. You don't know any of these people yet. What information or indicators are you starting to look for to say, this is the way in which I'm going to try to put this forecast together for the CEO for the quarter?
Yeah. That's a hard one. But I say,
I'm asking this.
Yeah. The first is you just, you got to look at the numbers, right? And you got to look at conversion rates. The math typically doesn't lie. So if you've got a $20 million pipe and you usually close, 40% of that, it's 8 million. Yeah. I'd probably give a number 6 because I want to make sure you can't miss that number because it's your credibility on the line. And you got a couple quarters to do that, before it's kind of your number with your pipe and your team.
Right.
So you just got to use the math. If you get something better than that, great. Maybe there's a couple things you can do to increase close rates a little bit. But I also think that helps you understand what's the cause of not having a higher conversion. Right. You also look at least for me, I'm new. I come in, I see what the pipe looks like. I want to see what it looks like late stage versus early stage. Right. What is late stage and what's our conversion rate there versus conversion rate of overall pipe?
Yeah.
So, absolutely important for me to kind of look at that and then look at, depending upon the company, is it a real velocity-based business where there's thousands of deals and you're looking at, kind of a percentage of those coming in, or if it's a mix, right? It's 30 or 60%, maybe 70% velocity, and then 30 to 40% large deals. But the large deals make up 70% of the revenue.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to dig in and figure out, what could possibly go wrong in these large deals, and where are you really in the close cycle of those deals? Back to your point, right? Do you have a strong champion? Do you have a strong ROI? Is this person going to advocate? Do you know the why now, why any? So I think there's a few of those things I've typically looked at, to try and make that judgment.
Yeah, I think if you're brand new, you can look at what was the productivity of the sales force last quarter and the prior quarters. It's probably just because you showed up that first quarter doesn't mean it's actually going to jump much.
Yeah.
No. Then you look at that conversion rate. I think you can also look at, in the past couple quarters, how many deals that came in were new and how many that came in were existing customers and what were those sizes of those deals. Now let me look at the forecast and those conversion rates you talked about and how many are new and how many are existing. And I'm probably going to get about the same average deal size. So I can do that and cut it that way also. And then, like you said, you go around and also ask for the forecast from your different leaders. But the problem with that is you don't know who the sandbaggers are yet. And you don't know who typically has rose-colored glasses. So,
and especially today, it's hard. I mean, I don't think any company's been immune to, I'll just make up a number, right? We had 100 salespeople to start the year. Things looked a little rocky. We went down to 80. Now we're going to get down to 60. The number hasn't changed dramatically. So, you go to 100 to 60, you got to have those 60 do, the work of what the 100 would do. So the yield, productivity per rep goes up.
Yeah.
And how realistic is that? So, there's that plausibility matrix as well that you need to be, in sync with the CFO.
I think that's the harsh reality. What you just outlined is a harsh reality for brand new CROs. They start to realize all I really have is headcount and productivity. Those are my only two knobs that I can turn. The headcount knob I can't turn unless the CEO gives me more heads. The productivity knob is the only one that I can actually turn. And, that's based upon, again, what we were talking about. Who did I hire? How am I onboarding them, training them, developing them, giving them the right leaders? And if I'm not doing those things, I'm not going to have a big effect on their productivity. And that's all they control. That's all you control. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey,
stark reality of our job.
Yeah, there's nowhere else to turn. And you control it all. So you have to do it. Hey, one more question. We have a number of listeners that are in, let's say, the 25 to 40-year-old range, and they probably haven't seen a tough economy like they're seeing right now. Do you have any advice for, leaders or salespeople who may be maneuvering through this sluggish economy right now on how to do better in, closing business?
Yeah, I mean, the first is you can focus on the things that are wrong, or you can just get out there and figure out a way to get things done. And while the future may be scary, even if you get to 80% of your number, right, your other teammates might be getting to 40%. So work harder, figure out how to get deals done, ask for help, right? Your manager's there to help. And, one of the greatest human qualities we have is when asked for help, people usually give it.
Yeah.
Another area is ask for executive support, right? Most executives want to get in and help, not tell you all the things that are wrong with the sales campaign that you've mounted, right? And sometimes eagle to eagle works, right? Getting CFO to CFO or, CIO to, if it's a small company, your CEO. So, if you're struggling, work on the pipe that you do have. Where's there an opportunity for executive touch points? Yeah. And always go back to basics, right? Just work hard, generate your pipe, follow the process, don't have happy years and just keep grinding. And I like grinders.
They're still going to spend money. They're still spending money just because it's a tough economy. It doesn't mean that they want to spend money. But what I think is happening is you're not competing only against your competition. You're competing against all the people, all the products and services that a CFO is looking at before he buys. So how compelling, if you're not doing, to our earlier point, doing your homework, getting a champion, building a cost justification, getting it to the highest levels of the organization, then you simply don't have a spokesperson when they're making those types of decisions. But they're spending money. I used to say they're not going down to the lobby to chop up like the furniture for firewood. They'd still spending money.
Absolutely.
Only the good salespeople are getting it. What's that?
Yeah. You got to make sure it's going to you.
Exactly, Chris Riley. Well, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, John. I listened to your podcast, and I know you personally, and it's an honor, privilege to be on, and hopefully we'll get together soon.
You got it. Thanks, Chris. And thanks to everyone for listening to another episode of the Revenue Builders Podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to check us out at forcemanagement.com.